Hello, and welcome to this webinar on Intel and threat analysis, the defensive duo. My name is Jens Monrad. I'm a global threat intelligence liaison from FireEye, and today I have the luxury of having a colleague with me. Maybe you want to introduce yourself, Al?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. This is Al Maslowski-Jurgis. I'm a systems engineering manager with FireEye.
So on this webinar, we are going to touch a bit on a few topics. Some of them are going to be a bit more practical out of a presentation, and then we are also going to do a demonstration on how having the right set of intelligence with the right set of analytics tool can help you make the best strategic decisions and also allow you to hunt on your network and in your infrastructure. I'm going to talk a bit about the cybersecurity challenges and then also try and define the space of cyber threat intelligence. And then we will wrap up with a few conclusions and also do a Q&A. So if we look at the cyber security challenges that many organizations are facing today, the reality is that the attack surface area have been expanding rapidly over the past few years. And this comes from a increased demand from employees inside organizations that wants to do work from various places. They want to bring in their own devices. And sometimes from a consumer perspective, it's also a matter of having connected devices at home, mixed together with the devices that consumers are using to work remotely into their employees. So we've seen a very rapidly expanding attack surface area. This also introduced more threat actors. Some of them have different motives. Some of their motives might be to obtain some sort of financial information. That could be credit card information, or it could be sensitive information like social security numbers or healthcare information. And then we, of course, also have the more sophisticated threat actors that might be conducting cyber intrusions on behalf or sponsored by potential nation states. The other challenge that we have seen from many organizations is that there is a operational chaos. And what I mean by that is that we do see a lot of organizations that are struggling to keep up with the numbers of alerts and number of events that they're facing daily. And also they are missing context in order to make the right priorities when it comes to things like, for example, patching or making new security policies. And this can create what I call alert fatigue. And sometimes it can also create a negligence when it comes to operating the security within the network. And it's kind of interesting because we have seen many organizations invest a lot of resources and also money into prevention and into protection from various technologies. But it's when I ask organizations if they feel that they are more secure, the answers that I get back from these organizations is not a definitive yes. Sometimes it's a maybe, and a few are also daring to say no. And one of the reasons is also that while prevention is absolutely key in order to protect yourself against cybersecurity attacks, there is no technology out there that can prevent all cyber attacks from happening. And if you, from a organization perspective, has invested all your funds and resources into prevention and protection, and those technologies are failing your organization, typically there is no way to actually respond to the threat, or there might be missing processes in order to actually form some sort of response or remediate the threat. And we are still also seeing a lot of organizations that are basing their security posture on reactive security tools that are typically based on signatures or based on a feed of IP addresses or domains or URLs. And this, of course, will always be a reactive protection, and it will always be behind when a new threat emerges or a potential cyber threat actor changes the way that they are compromising the network. So we need to move from a reactive approach, and it's interesting, and I'm sure you can see this in many of your organizations as well, is that there has been a growth in incidents and events, and potentially also a growth of in tools that many organizations use. And since there is an increase in threats and incidents and maybe tools, the numbers of resources that we have available in, for example, in staff, almost is the same in any case. So what I mean by that is that we are tasked to do more with either the same or less resources. And in order to address this, we need to try and work smarter when it comes to threats. And as I said in the previous slide, prevention is of course key. But history has shown us that prevention will eventually fail. And if we don't have processes in place that allows us to either automate or enrich our data with enough details so we can make those smart decisions, we might actually end up in a phase where we are not able to react on what we are detecting, and we are not able to detect the threat in a timely manner where we can actually isolate the threat actor from obtaining their goals inside our infrastructure. For those of you who have been in the security industry for a long time, or maybe have haven't the luxury of listening into a webcast, you might have seen this slide before. I want to use this slide because I think it's really good to tell a story on what is actually needed in order for an organization to actually disrupt a cyber attack, and potentially also how to disrupt a threat actor. If you look at the pyramid of pain, and also if you look at it in a combination with cyber threat intelligence, typically organizations have information available in the lower end of the pyramid. This is the easy and the trivial information, the lists of IP addresses, the potential list of hash values, and maybe even domain names. While that information is good on a tactical level to actually block a potential threat, it won't disrupt the way that a threat actor is operating. In order to do that, you have to understand what sort of tools, techniques, and procedures, and potentially also the motivation behind a threat actor. And if you can disrupt that, you will also cause the threat actor to spend more resources into trying to compromise an organization. And in order to do that, you need to have the right set of information. And more importantly, you also need to have context to the threats that you are detecting in your network, and also potentially subscribing to on a daily digest via email, for example. So if we have to be better in defending our networks, we have to be able to learn and know about the threat actors, what motivates them, and also how we can disrupt the way that they're trying to compromise our networks. when I talk to organizations, typically what I hear is that the leadership wants to know specific information, but the operational part of the organization are not able to produce the answers that the leadership wants to know. So typically, there are two things that I tend to hear. One of them is that the information that we have available to us either by tools or by technology or by log information cannot produce the answers that you see on the left side on the screen. And furthermore, another argument that I hear is that the leadership do not understand the threat our company is facing. If you look at the right side of the slide here, this is typically the information organizations are producing to the leadership. And as you can see, there is a gap between what the leadership wants to know and what the operational part of the organization are able to produce. So I don't necessarily think that it's as simple as the leadership don't understand the threat. I think it's also a matter of what sort of information are we able to provide to our leadership. What sort of strategic value can we provide to the leadership in organizations so they are able to make strategic decisions and potential strategic investments into the cybersecurity area. So I think this is something that I see a lot from organizations that I talk to. On one hand, they are frustrating that the leadership don't seem to listen to the potential threats, but on the other hand, the leadership is also very frustrated that they cannot get the critical answers, the critical questions answered by the operational part. And I think this is also where we need to be able to drive much more context into the threats that we are seeing inside organizations and deliver that strategic content to the leadership. So before I switch over to Al to do a demonstration, I want to just spend 1 minute on how we are doing at FireEye and why we believe that leading with intelligence when it comes to security is the right approach. It is our belief that intelligence, if you have the right set of intelligence, you can create better strategies when it comes to responding to a threat, but also when it comes to investments and potential organizations, design and structure. It will also allow your organization to work much more efficiently. And lastly, you will be able to respond faster to the threats that you are seeing in your environment. And the way that we are doing this at FireEye is that we try to address this before an attack and during an attack and after an attack. And it is actually a combination of three organizations inside FireEye. We have our adversary intelligence from my side, and we have the constant detection of our FireEye technology spread across the globe, picking up information on new threats and new detections. And then we have the information that we pick up when we do incident response assignments across the globe. And having those three sets of information gives us visibility across the extended attack lifecycle, and we are also able to produce that set of intelligence into three specific pieces. One of them being the tactical part, where we are able to provide machine-to-machine-based intelligence, and then we are also able to produce strategic intelligence to the leaderships within the organizations, so they can make the strategic decisions. And in combination of those two, the operational part of an organization will actually be able to perform easier and also make quicker decisions when it comes to, for example, forensics or detection, or maybe conducting their own incident response assignments, and also provide the ability to hunt for additional artifacts or additional breaches inside the network. And on a tactical level, the information will also make the operational team have some sort of prioritization when it comes to patches. Not all vulnerabilities are created equally, and I think it's important to have that information when it comes to patching inside your environment, because not all vulnerabilities are also being exploited by cyber threat actors. So in order to make that prioritization and not just patch everything from A to C within an hour, give the operational part of the organization some breathing room where they can make those decisions and make the quick and best decisions. And lastly, of course, having the strategic information can be consumed on the leadership level, where we are able to provide information that will help the leadership make the right priorities, and potentially also put a face on the adversaries and the threats in a more human context way. And then all the information or the intelligence that we provide can be applied into our various technologies and services. And with that, I'll hand it over to Al to talk more about our threat analytics platform.
Thanks, Jens. So yeah, as Jens was talking about, all this intel then becomes useful to the organization in multiple different manners. And what I'm going to do is show you today one of our platforms, one of our product sets that allows us to take that intel in those many different forms and from all those different sources that he described, and start to apply that against your event data and the things that are coming into and addressing your network right now. So I should be sharing this screen at this point. Looks like it's come up. So this application that I'm showing you right now is called our Threat Analytics Platform. And you can see some typical things you might see in a normal SIM, a set of alerts and incident workflow and things like that. But one thing I wanted to first call your attention to was the idea that this is not just a FireEye only product. So we use this within our FireEye as a service, but we also ingest multiple different types of events, and it's in the hundreds of different types that we can ingest today, and we have not yet found one that we have not been able to use. So it's something that we keep adding to and using along the way, and then we take each of the events as they come in, and then we compare those against the various detection capabilities. So we compare it first against our intel all along the way, and then we also employ and manage a set of curated rules in each environment. And in this case, we're up to about 1,900 rules, a little over that are people back at the in the back end. Their whole job is to write rules and do detection for customers within TAP. And so you can see, we end up putting quite a few different detection types out there, as well as you can look at the rule pack capability here. So we put them out there by commodity malware types of things, cloud infrastructure, point of sale types of attacks and alerts that we need to look at, targeted malware, et cetera. So there's a whole host of different types of rules that we curate and manage for our customers, in addition to matching that against the intel on the back end that Jens was talking about. So once we get to that point, then the other idea of this product, beyond just being able to manage and compare, is then be able to use that information very quickly. And I'm going to go through a quick investigation here. I'll probably take a few shortcuts so we don't run out of too much time and we have plenty of time for questions. But I'm going to run through a quick investigation here against an open alert that we see that has come up. In this case, it's a customer-specific rule. but it has to do with IP addresses, again, that strategic information or tactical intel that we've seen in the clandestine wolf attack. And so you can see, you come down here and see a little bit of information about what this is about, what the group has been doing, but we can also pivot a little bit more to get more of that tactical and additional capability and understanding here. So we've associated this particular set of attacks with a group that we track called APT3. So I'm able to, within the tool, then pivot directly into a dossier, a threat profile of the APT3 group, and kind of understand what it is that FireEye knows about this group, located in China, how they work on things, the industries that they attack, and so forth. And so I can really kind of start to understand what these guys do, how they steal data, what types of tools, techniques, and procedures that they utilize, and the various attachments in email we see here through spear phishing. So that's not unusual, but it gives me more information to know what I'm looking for. How they establish a foothold, et cetera. And I'm not going to read through all this, but it gives you that capability. They use Windows Net internally, et cetera. It gives you some things that you might look for and understand this attacker who's at your front door and triggering off the alarms. So let me come back to this investigation, and I can, pop back and forth between the tabs, of course, anytime I need to refer to information while I'm investigating. But let me come down here to some of the alerts. Now, this is a little bit more full than you would typically see. The first thing you see is related alerts. It's a demo system, so some of the data gets replayed regularly, and I hope nobody's got this many APT3 attacks in their environment. But anyway, it gives you an idea of what to start to look for. So from here, then I can see several things. I see all the information from the alert, but then the source IP, so the internal IP address that's involved in this. So that's probably one of the first places I want to go. I'm going to see what kind of information is flowing in from this internal IP address, what it's connecting to, and so forth. So one of the first things I see in my group by list here is all the different types of log files that I'm getting that includes this IP address. So I've got some DHCP and things like that. I've got DNS. Some web traffic, PIX traffic. I'm going to jump into the PIX side of things real quick, and I'm going to add that here. So I've got only the PIX traffic that I'm looking at. And then I've got the geotagging turned on so I can see where this is coming from and going to. And, in this case, it's out in California, but I've got a device name, et cetera. I've got multiple different pieces of information that I get from this. And, I might spend some time here pivoting between different pieces of data and so forth. But let me see in my data. Well, here, okay, this one will work. So I know that this host, now I've got a host name, so I'm going to pivot to what's happening with this particular host on the network, because not all network or not all logs have an IP address in them. And, I'm going to start with that. So I want to further dig down into what's happening with this particular host. And you can see as I'm searching through all this, I've got quite a bit of information over the last 12 hours that I've been able to get in touch with, and I get the results in, in this case, 4/100ths of a second. So I've got pretty quick response time, so I can do a lot of pivoting and moving and around and really understand what's happening in my environment. So now I see that not only among the PIX traffic and some endpoint alerting, I've also got a whole bunch of Windows events. So what I'm going to do is add those Windows events to see what's happening on this host in this time frame. And so taking a look at the host here in this time frame, I can then start to take a look. I've got normal Windows messages and things like that, but the other things I'm going to look for is potentially a user who's logged into this, as well as other activity that's going on with this host name. So one thing, since we've got detailed process tracking turned on, I can add a group by there, and I can take a look at all the processes that are running on the machine that have been logged. And as you know, that gets pretty messy in a Windows environment, but I'm also going to add another field here called args that gives me the command line arguments of any processes that are running along with that process itself. And again, it's pretty messy, but I can put it in a table and start to take a closer look, because if I'm looking for a human attacker or other specific activity, I'm going to be looking for somebody who's running something at a command line and different things that they may be doing. And this search at the moment I was having a little trouble with, so I'm going to jump to another piece here, knowing that I have my user ID, which is the part I was having trouble with. I've got Kimmy F. Here is the user ID, and I'll pop back to that table again, and I can see a little bit clearer what's going on. I've got this user launching a scheduled task, an AT command, also running 7ZA, which is a command line zip utility. I can see what they're archiving and what they're working on. There's additional information. Okay, this AT command they're launching, scheduling a task at victim A2. So I may now want to include that as well as the user ID kminx in my search to find out what's going on. So as you can see, we can take this investigation back from one artifact and one alert down to what's happening on the endpoint, and really kind of use that intel that we learned, that we've put together here. They're using the AT and net commands, built-in Windows stuff to maintain a presence and move around laterally in the environment. So Jens, let me go ahead and turn it back to you for some conclusions.
Thank you all. So instead of writing some conclusions, I just want to maybe put some emphasis on some of the things that I said, and also in combination with what Al demonstrated. If organizations have to be better and with the resources that they have, it's clearly evident that they also have to embrace automation, but also consider what sort of information when it comes to threat intelligence that they have available. Is it only a set of tactical information that will give them a feed of IP addresses, potential file hashes and domain names, or is it also intelligence that will give them strategic information around why they might be targeted by a threat actor, what their motivations are going to be, and potentially also who they are, and in this scope of the demonstration, also how are they operating? What sort of tools are they utilizing? Are they using legitimate Windows tools in order to steal information and exfiltrate that information? Are they using customized tools that they have written themselves, and so on? And hopefully, by having that information, the operational part of an organization can also move from delivering these sort of metric-typed reports that we see in many instances, that are not really providing any answers, but more talking about how many things that were detected or blocked or tickets closed, to deliver a much more strategic information based on the threats that organizations are actually facing. Of course, I have no doubt that that from a leadership perspective, the version 2 is able to provide those answers to the organization, whereas the version 1 will not help any leadership making any sort of strategic considerations when it comes to cybersecurity. So with that, we will open up for a Q&A, and there is already a few questions coming in. And the first question is, how is FireEye different to other threat intel feeds? So I think we don't really consider our threat intelligence as a feed. The reason for that is that a feed is just typically raw, unfiltered information. I understand that from a tactical perspective, having a list of IP addresses that you can put into a blocking mechanism like your firewall or your proxy might help you prevent something, but it does require a lot of effort, because how long do those IP addresses live, and what are you actually blocking when a threat actor is moving to a new infrastructure? And
and I'll just add that I think what Jens is saying is also that the feeds are typically just that tactical bit of intel, right? It doesn't give you the understanding of who, why, and how they operate. And that's something that we really excel in based on where we get our intel from.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at how we have structured our intel organization within FireEye, we have today I think close to 300 people that are placed all over the globe, picking up adversary information in the countries and regions where they're placed. And then we are also getting a lot of tactical information from our technology and from our incident response engagement. But all that information is actually being analyzed by real humans inside our organization. And the people that are analyzing that set of information, they have backgrounds which makes them competent in determining what might be the motivations behind a specific cyber attack in a specific region. Is it based on political conflicts, or is it based on potential industrial espionage information, or what might be the motivation behind it? So we have people that are making those assessments based on all the automated information that we are picking up from technology and from our processes and from our people. And I think that's really the key element when it comes to disrupting the threat actors, is to have that set of information and understand how a threat actor is operating by knowing their TTPs. And the information we can then make available in our technology, or we can make it available where customers are able to subscribe to this information based on their industry or based on their interest. And this will help them also prioritize things like patching, but also potential business decisions when it comes to, let's say, investments or mergers and acquisitions. I think that's one of the main differentiators. We treat our intelligence differently, because we understand that if we have to help organizations, we have to deliver the strategic piece of intelligence as well.
Okay, and I see another question in here, which I think you partially answered, Jens, but the question is, everyone talks about threat intelligence, but how do I actually utilize it to make it useful for determining security posture and positioning threats to the board? So I think that part of that is, one solution is the TAP solution that I talked to you about and demonstrated, in that we're taking that intel and we're measuring against all of the events coming into your environment. And so you're able to then immediately not just say we've been attacked 3 or 4 times, but we've had an attack from threat group A, B, or C, or attack profile A, B, C, or D, and specific pieces of malware that are being tracked and being utilized in compromises around the world, as Jens talked about. So you have that back-end intel then to give quantifiable information back to the board and understand what your real security posture is.
Yeah, and I think I can just I guess, talk a bit about the example that you were demonstrating, Al, on APT3 and the campaigns associated with that group. So in some of the instances, they were utilizing zero-day exploits, and having that knowledge suddenly and being able to deliver what sort of vulnerable components that the threat actor are exploiting will also help the organizations realizing what they need to patch. And furthermore, knowing how they are operating, they could be potentially doing strategic web compromises or sending a specific kind of spear phishing emails, or maybe even targeting very selective industries. We are able to deliver that information to those industries that are being affected or being targeted by a specific threat actor, with accurate information on how they're doing it and why they're doing it, and also what tools and potential exploits the threat actor is utilizing in order to make their attacks successful. So I think that's the context part of it, which is very, very important.
Yeah. Absolutely. I wanted to make sure everybody knew that there are a set of attachments and links in the presentation, so that you have a threat analytics platform overview, M-Trends, EMEA edition, as well as some additional components around alerting and threat intelligence that you feel free to download and take with you as part of our gift for joining the webcast today.
And I see there's also another question in terms of is it possible for threat actors to monitor the information gathering efforts of their targets? And yes, we do see examples of that, and I would say it is a coincidence that we talked about this specific threat actor in the demonstration, because one thing that we saw when we published our first initial intel brief of the campaign was that they changed the infrastructure they were using and the tactics they were using. They changed those quite rapidly. And since we were having a good track of that threat actor, we were able to continuously monitor the threat actor regardless of the change of infrastructure. But if you don't have that that specific intel information, you would still be blocking the old infrastructure, and that would probably mean that the threat actor would be able to conduct further compromises of the industries. So yeah, it is something that we see, and it is also I wouldn't necessarily say a delicate subject, but it is something that we are constantly also evaluating in regards to what information we provide to the public and what sort of information we direct more into our technology or into our intelligence products.
Yeah, for instance, one of the typical things that we see there is somebody under attack taking some odd attacker tools or otherwise and just uploading them to VirusTotal, and or doing Google searches on it, and the attackers monitor those tools as well and see that their malware or their attack tool has been found, and then typically shift gears and change how they operate. So it is definitely important. So the follow-on question looks like, so conducting your research anonymously would help. Yes, that is absolutely true. And the research that we do from an eyesight perspective out in the field with operatives around the world is very much an anonymous type of research, as well as you'll see that we publish, on our website several different, dossiers of criminal organizations, attacker organizations out there, but by no means is that exhaustive of everything we know about who's operating where. We don't publish those publicly. So we conduct our research, and for our paying customers for that intel, we then provide them that access to that strategic intel so they can help make decisions for their organization.
So I think that that's basically wraps it up. If there is more questions, and we will monitor the webinar and try to answer those, and of course feel free to reach out to us if you have additional comments or information. But other than that, I would like to say thank you for listening in and wish you all a great day.
Great. Thank you, everybody.